wild turkeys are known to some as an American tradition. The centerpiece of a celebration table, the image found on paper plates and napkins in November.
The image of a wild turkey gobbler in full strut is one of those iconic images that, when you think of something as simple as Thanksgiving dinner, you automatically think of that.
To some, the wild turkey is a nuisance, roaming neighborhood streets, picking on innocent passersby, and nesting in yards.
There's this turkey. I can't get out of my car. This thing keeps trying to attack me. And he is right outside my window, and he's mad. He rolls his window down, and I can hear the turkey through his phone just like going crazy.
And to others, the wild turkey is a figure kind of like Moby Dick that invites them into a chess match of wills and ethics.
What I try to do is I try to be one of them. Think like them.
But the hunting and preservation of this creature, the weird wild turkey, has given way to a subculture with its own universe. Huge gatherings, industries, nonprofits, equipment, celebrities, and language. It's a multifaceted niche that's a hobby for some, a lifestyle for others, and a profession for a select few. In this 4-part mini-series of Niche to Meet You, we explore the world of wild turkey conservation, a thing formally started in the mid-1900s, but whose roots reach back thousands of years.
Every creature, every animal, every plant in that forest or in your environment, you want to safeguard it. And every time you take, you give, you pray. You pray or you sing or you give something back to it.
What we discover from this wild turkey exploration may be as elusive as the creature itself. But if those who love it wax poetic about the experience of hunting it, surely there's meaning to be found. You'll even come with me turkey hunting in the Tennessee woods on a quest to hear this captivating gobble. I'm Leslie Thompson. It's Niche to Meet You, and this is Wild Turkey Conservation. Before we go on, I want to address something. Call it the elephant in the room. Why are we talking about wild turkey conservation? Emphasis on conservation. Why not turkey hunting, or turkey calling, or turkey taxidermy? You'll learn about all of those things in this mini-series, by the way. But no, this is about conservation of the wild turkey. Because the conservation of the wild turkey includes all of it, and more. Let me be clear. If this story was only about hunting, I wouldn't be interested to tell it, and I wouldn't ask you for your time to listen. It's not the hunting and the peripheral activities that compelled me to make 4 episodes about this thing. To spend countless hours collecting audio and waking up at 4 a.m. on a Saturday to sit on a wet forest floor. It's because if you spend more than 5 minutes talking to a turkey hunter like I have, you'll begin to realize there's more to the wild turkey story than the culture of hunting it down, tagging one, and bringing it home to mount on the wall. What you'll hear when you lean in is that it's an important story for all of us. We can learn a lot and maybe even be a little bit changed. Maybe our world can become more nuanced. No, see, the wild turkey conservation story isn't just about hunting. It's about more than that. It's about mending seemingly irreparable gaps. And yes, changing the world. And I really mean that. In this mini-series, we'll follow our science-approved episode formula for learning about a niche interest that's a lot like shaking the hand of someone you've never met before. You'll get an overview of what it's about in episode 1. Then you'll learn more about the background and character of the ones who do it in episode 2. Then maybe you'll think, how'd these people even come to do it at all? Which is when episode 3 introduces you to the origins of the thing, before finally telling you why it matters in episode 4. And folks, wild turkey conservation matters. The lessons we'll find within this mini-series will help us connect some dots, which, if you listen to our thesis episode, you know that's what we're all about. But to understand how wild turkey conservation accomplishes this, we do have to talk about hunting. And we also have to talk about where the wild turkey came from.
The wild turkey, I think, is the only North American animal with wild in its name.
That's Brent Rogers. You'll hear him a lot in this series. He's a wild turkey historian and call collector in Iowa. He helped me understand that the delight in this odd bird is actually historic. Turns out, the wild turkey has always been in North America, but they didn't even get their name until they took a trip overseas.
Aztecs and Incas had domesticated turkeys, and turkeys were taken by the Spanish in 1520s back to Europe from Mexico. And it's a bit mysterious. Some people think because Turkish traders were trading it, turkey was given the name turkey.
So while the name actually came from Europe, the turkey is 100% North American. It's kind of an all-American bird. So much so that a lot of folks will claim that Ben Franklin wanted our national bird to be a wild turkey instead of an eagle. Now, this myth isn't completely true, by the way.
In a letter to his daughter, after the eagle was chosen as the national symbol, Ben Franklin wrote that he wished the wild turkey would have been chosen because it was a much more noble bird.
Fellow turkey enthusiast and legendary call-maker Bob Fulcher spoke to the national importance of the bird when we talked, which is also what endeared it to Ben Franklin.
When he felt like the wild turkey really stood for America, because it was a bird that was widespread across the country, and he just thought that was more of a symbol for us as a country than an aggressive predator-type bird.
There's another aspect to the historical significance of the turkey that seems obvious to me, but I'll point it out here. Turkeys immediately bring to mind a feasting table, don't they? I'm guessing the moment you heard or saw the word turkey related to this project, you thought about Thanksgiving. Despite history textbooks reducing the November event to a peaceful coexisting of two parties, one with headdresses and the other with pilgrim hats, warmly celebrating unity around a long table, we know that the actual context surrounding the first Thanksgiving was anything but tranquil. It was indeed a harvest meal celebration shared between the early colonizers and the Wampanoag people in Plymouth, Massachusetts. But the stories we're told in elementary school don't lead us to believe that the peace of that meal was temporary. Soon after, conflict began again, and the Wampanoag peoples would lose their land and the control of it.
I mean, look, they welcomed the invaders. It's just the native way. I mean, because they were just hospitable people. They wanted to help, but it was not returned.
That's Cindy Yahola, a member of the Creek Nation who runs the Wilson County Powwow in Tennessee. This piece of the turkey story, how it became a national symbol based on misinformation, it matters a great deal. It matters that we know that the conservation of this bird is really about undoing an unhelpful practice with origins dating hundreds of years back. And it's exemplified in the truth about the first Thanksgiving meal. You'll meet Cindy later in the series when we dissect this, how the indigenous people's practices and beliefs built the basis for repairing the turkey population. But to understand that, we have to learn how the wild turkey almost went extinct. To learn more about the sordid past of the wild turkey species, I talked to biologist Roger Shields, the Wild Turkey Program Coordinator for the state of Tennessee. He helps the state track populations, but he's also the guy that fields calls about aggressive birds in neighborhoods.
And the turkey must have known the UPS guy because he got up and walked straight to the door of that UPS truck, fluffed up, like calling, like the UPS guy's got his clipboard and is shielding himself from this turkey who is going after the UPS driver. And he's like, man, every day I come, this thing chases me. He gets in his truck and drives off, and the turkey chases him for like 4 driveways down the road.
But there was a point in history when seeing a turkey in a neighborhood just wouldn't happen because there weren't really any. Hunting nearly wiped the species out.
In the early 1900s, there was a lot of subsistence hunting, but there was also a lot of what we call market hunting. Wild animals were being hunted and then basically shipped to markets in the East. It was basically commercial hunting, and there was a market. And that commercial hunting, whether it was bison in the Great Plains, passenger pigeons, throughout the eastern part of the United States, but it was causing a lot of decline in numbers of species. But there was a group of hunters that started to recognize we're losing a lot of our game species. A lot of our wildlife species are disappearing. And they took the initiative to take action about that.
Wait, it was the hunters? Yep. It was the hunters that saved the wild turkey from extinction. The hunters banded together to save the very thing they hunted. Turkey historian Brent explained this to me.
Some people think there were 30,000 turkeys that were wild left across the whole country versus when Columbus arrived, they estimated around 10 million. So politicians and landowners and conservation organizations, academics and biologists all came together. And in 1959 had their first wild turkey symposium and said, we understand there's a problem and these are the tools we need to fix it. And they got busy and started to do that. The other population was that really rabid bunch of turkey hunters that even though there were so few left, they loved it so much, they kept going, even though a successful season may have been to hear one gobble. It wasn't even about killing it. They just loved doing it. And they kept making some turkey calls and they kept that tradition alive.
Did you catch that? It wasn't even about killing, he said. Really? I respond. How could this be?
I know that sounds crazy, but I always say a real hunter wants the animal to live more than you want it to die. And if you're going to take, you have to give back. That's why there's tens of thousands of people gathering at the National Wild Turkey Federation now, and why millions of dollars will change hands, because there are so many people passionate about the wild turkey that they want to see it live more than they want to see it die.
The tradition Brent talks about is core to the understanding of the wild turkey conservation niche. You heard him mention just now the National Wild Turkey Federation, and you'll learn more about this later in the episode. This is the formalization of the conservation efforts founded in the mid-20th century, the group of hunters that saw a problem and worked to fix it. These hunters, there's something that compels them to go out before the sun rises and yearn to simply hear a sound, something that galvanized them to take serious action, something more than just hunting itself. It was a way to survive that was passed down through generations.
Hunting, in general, allows people to connect further to their food than anything else, even farming. Growing up on a farm, my father remembers slaughtering their own animals, but that's a connection to your food. And then when you start to do it, that's where you start to see beyond the food. And then you start to see the value of the life you're taking. Once you establish that and you stand there with something that whose life you just took, for most of us, there's a lot of gravity in that. You know, I lay my hand on every turkey, even with people I've taken that are not spiritual people, and I say a prayer of thanks, because to me, that's a sacred act.
Coming up, more about this effort to save the wild turkey species and the surprising way it asked for buy-in from the ones who love to hunt it. After this break. Hey, real quick, I want to thank you so much for listening to this first episode of the mini-series. Our team is so proud of it. It's no small thing that you spend your time with something, so thank you. If you love it and want to support it, the best way to do that is to tell someone who you think will love it too. Just text them about it, even right now. If you want to leave a review in Apple or leave a rating on Spotify, that would be a really great cherry on top of an already delicious sundae by you telling a couple people. Okay, let's get back to the episode. Back to the wild turkey. And let's get this out of the way. This is not the same kind of frozen bird you'd get at a grocery store. We're not talking about the turkey that we're buying at Aldi for our Thanksgiving table.
No, ma'am. There is an organization for that. I think they might actually just be called the National Turkey Federation.
The W is important then.
Yes. So when we're talking about wild turkey, we're not talking about the bourbon.
That's Pete. He works for the National Wild Turkey Federation. You've heard this mentioned a couple times already. It was the official formation of hunters and conservationists nationwide who came together to solve a problem.
And it's been considered by many to be one of the greatest conservation success stories in the United States when you look at a particular species.
But this wasn't a simple effort of just laying off the hunting for a while. It required some modern technology. Here's Brent Rogers again.
There were drugged turkeys and netted turkeys and things that they had early on, even before 1950 or around 1950, that they were transporting. But it wasn't until after World War II when they took a cannon, essentially, and were using what they called cannon nets to shoot over turkeys and capture them live. And then they had radio telemetry, and that made the difference. So state agencies started doing that. And in the 1950s and 60s, many states had restoration programs. What the Wild Turkey Federation did is came in and turned that into a unified effort and looked across the country and said, we're going to target these areas and we're going to improve this habitat, and helped raise the money to do that.
Yeah, the hunters even put their money behind it. Not just for them, but for future generations. Largely in the form of the 1937 Pittman-Robertson Act, which places the funds from firearms and ammunition right into the hands of wildlife agencies for conservation work. As Brent says,
if it wasn't for the Pittman-Robertson Act, there wouldn't be money to even start that effort. The wild turkey would not have been restored without hunters. Being able to hunt, not everybody's for that. But when the people that want to hunt are the driving force behind making sure that habitat for wildlife is improved, it certainly gives you not just a vote, but a stake in it. And that's where I think we've been able to work together even outside of political norms, because people just can't deny that there's not only is there a passion there, but there's blood, sweat, and tears invested into it. And as you talk to the biologists and folks like that, that's what they do. They pursued those careers because it's what they wanted to do.
People just like Roger, the biologist who works specifically with turkeys in Tennessee. This full-scale effort to save the wild turkey species required collaboration of two seemingly opposing forces. But we'll find through the next 3 episodes that they really aren't opposed at all. In fact, they both inherit practices that have been working together for thousands of years, and were actually present at the beginning of our very own American cultural wild turkey origin story. Now, here's a final yet very important wild turkey fact. It's incredibly adaptable, which means, yes, it can exist just about anywhere between the 2 coasts in the United States. That's another reason why Ben Franklin thought it more appropriate as our national bird. But there is a catch. They need places to roost and water to drink. Climate doesn't matter, but their species-specific needs cover needs of many species, and their presence is an indication of the health of a local ecosystem.
It's habitat management is the key of it, but if you don't have that part right, that's where turkeys can be exploited, whether it's by predators or just hunting in general, because you're taking and you're not allowing for the same rate of putback.
When you consider the wild turkey, you have to put a lot of other things in balance and in check.
The bottom line is that you look at any place wild turkey habitat has been reestablished, and you'll see a benefit for songbirds and other game species. And when those dollars are spent, it's benefiting maybe the wild turkey the least in some ways, because what you're doing is not increasing the turkey population by 5,000%. It's probably incremental. What you're doing is improving the quality of the habitat for everything to survive, and probably the food and water quality as well. So that's the real investment, I think.
Which benefits us.
Yeah, absolutely.
The work of conservationists and hunters in the mid-1900s to undo the misuse of the land over hundreds of years was ultimately returning to the original conservationist methods of ballads and reciprocity. And we'll talk about that later in the series. Coming up on the next episode of Niche to Meet You and our 4-part mini-series about wild turkey conservation.
Contestant number 1, your final call will be Gobbler Yelp.
We're stewards of the land because the land doesn't belong to us. It never belongs to us.
Give us wisdom and reverence so to use the resources of nature, that no one may suffer from our abuse of them, and that generations yet to come may continue to praise you for your bounty.
See if I can make one gobble.
This project is produced by me with immense help from my editor and blind spot checker, Chris Thiessen. The music you heard was composed by Abigail Flowers and arranged by Zach and Maggie White. Our art is by Rachel Hardacre, and our mastering is by Kevin Morris. You can read more about the Niche to Meet You project and all of the wonderful niche interests we cover at www.nichetomeetyou.show.